For me, the walk really began, and the awareness piece that Lauren's kids work so hard on started 4 years ago. I was actually driving home from class one day and heard a man who was talking about walking across the country to provide awareness for diabetes research. And so I called my dad that night and said, well, I'm going to walk across the country to bring about awareness for child abuse. And he said, you're crazy, and hung up the phone. But we continued that conversation, and we really started looking at how we could really create awareness. And so I started training, and April got closer, April being Child Sexual Assault Awareness Month. And so I said, well, we better figure this out because I'm doing it. And so that year, our first year, walked 500 miles, the home that I was actually sexually assaulted in, all the way to Tallahassee, where true change takes place. And so from that, we've grown every year in what we've done. The first year was 500 miles, the second year was 1,000, moved to 1,500 miles, and this year we're doing 1,500 miles with over 60 different events to bring about awareness for child abuse. And so people really understand that 95% of sexual abuse is preventable with education and awareness. And it's all of our responsibilities to spot suspected abuse, report it, and be active members in our community in protecting our children. Last year, one of the things that we worked really hard on was the passage of the mandatory reporting law, which makes Florida the only truly mandatory reporting state in the country. That is, before last year, teachers, doctors, nurses all had a responsibility to report abuse. But a person on the side of the road necessarily didn't have that same responsibility. The Florida legislature agreed that probably wasn't the smartest thing. And so we went about changing that law. So now it's everyone's not only moral obligation and responsibility, but everyone's legal responsibility as well. So that if you suspect that a child is being abused, you must call the Florida Abuse Hotline, which is 1-800-96-ABUSE. And it's everybody's responsibility. And that's a really important thing that people need to take away. That if you see something that's not quite right, if your gut is telling you something isn't quite right, report it. That's the most important message that we can share, as we go through and walk through Broward County and help really the Child Services Council and the prevention around Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We all need to be responsible for each other, and really, if you see something that's not quite right, report it. I think what the Children's Services Council, the Nancy Jo Cotterman Sexual Assault Treatment Center is doing in Broward County with the different public service announcements, this television program, different campaigns that they do, the park event that you guys are going to have in a couple weeks. Lauren's Kids is working with the Department of Children and Families to put out PSAs for people to don't miss the signs. We've launched a very large campaign, don'tmissthesigns.org, where we're asking all Floridians to take the pledge, to pledge their eyes and their voice to protect our kids. I think it takes several different mediums. I think that, we need to put things out in print. I think we need to have billboards. I think we need to have things in the media outlets. We need people to see something 3 or more times before they actually start paying attention to it. And I think that Broward County really goes a long way in to work together to get that message out there. And I think that that's a really important thing, and that's something that I'm really proud, when I look back to where I'm from. This is my home, and I'm proud that they have really taken the ball, and it's not an ego thing. It's all about working together to protect our kids. And so I'm really proud to be from such a wonderful place, and where really people work so hard to protect kids.
It's a very powerful story. Dr. Wright, you see this very often, sadly.
I think Lauren Bach's experience and her passion and her method actually to talk about child sexual abuse, the experience of child sexual abuse in the first person as she does, and her ongoing effort to get all of society to talk about this is a shining example of how prevention really is going to work. Because for child sexual abuse, that person knows what's going on, they have a story to tell, and we have a system in place to move forward, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel that is going to be a better place. It requires them to talk about what they're doing. As I tell everybody, we're the grown-ups. We can talk about anything. And children should all know that Most grown-ups are trusted individuals, and we don't want this to happen. As a society, we will talk about the stuff that we don't want to happen. That's how we solve problems. And this is a great example of how we can show our children we can solve this problem by talking about it and getting it out in the open, because it's the secrecy that gives it the power. So if we break into the only way to get past secrecy is with discussion. And the only way to get past all these emotions is to just allow them to occur and discuss why they're there. And then you can move on. Otherwise, you get stuck with them.
And there are some ways of doing that.
Yes, definitely talking about it, but I think the main component is listening. The part of the home builders is teaching active listening. While we do that, as well as I statements, that teaches the parent as well as the children how to express themselves, how to identify their feelings. And then doing the active listening is not always finding a solution. It's just listening, the nodding your head, the parroting, the reflecting. A lot of that, you get a lot out of individuals just by active listening. And some individuals don't know how to do that. They learn how to fuss, learn how to go back and forth, fix the problem. And sometimes it's not a problem to be fixed. It's just basically just listening and teaching that as part of the home builders model.
And letting the child know that they can be heard.
Yes.
That what they're feeling matters.
And validated.
Yes.
And feel validated about it. Yeah.
And it can be pretty scary once the wheels that go in motion when they express this can be kind of scary, but important for saving them and ultimately. And that's kind of where you come in.
And then once they come to us at the state attorney's office, again, the listening continues. We hold what's called a pre-filing interview. We listen to the child tell us their abuse, whether or not we have the elements to proceed forward and file a case. And a lot of times what we see happen is once a child comes in and we've decided to move forward and file a child abuse case, they will subsequently either recant or they will say, I made it up. And a lot of times it's pressures from within the family, from the abuser, if he is still in the family, from a parent, or even guilt in not wanting to destroy the family, not wanting to take away the economic resources of the family. All of those factors are things that those children deal with. They think about it and they rationalize, do I want to do this? And when you really sit and listen to them and you talk to them, did it really happen? They will say, yes, but I don't want to lose my dad. I don't want my mom to lose her husband. I don't want my sister to lose her father. And when you think of that type of pressure for a child, it all impacts what happens in the overall scheme of things. So those are all the things that we look at once the case comes to us and that we have to deal with.
Well, I'm sitting here listening and I'm thinking about, we've been talking about sexual abuse, but you know, we have neglect,
Yes.
we have psychological abuse, we have abandonment, and we have physical abuse.
That is correct.
I mean, as a parent, we certainly want to discipline our kid, but we don't want to abuse them. And a lot of times our children grow up in cultures where these things are prevalent and they just go with it as being the way that life is, when it's not.
It's not. That is absolutely true. And if I may add, that is also one of the things that we deal with. You have the culture where corporal punishment is acceptable. A lot of Haitians and Jamaican, their community, it's normal to spank your children and leave marks or bruises. So that's a balancing for us, because we then have to determine, is this reasonable discipline or is it child abuse? Where do you draw the line? Now, the law has laid it out and specifically said you need more than substantial welts or bruises for it to be child abuse. Parent can discipline their children so long as they remain within the confines of the exercise of that authority and not make it excessive discipline. When it becomes excessive, when you're looking at broken bones, skull fractures, burns, and the like, then we're in the realm of child abuse.
And
So
I think for that discipline versus child abuse issue, you also have to explore the context of what is the behavior that they're trying to change in the child.
Right.
And often you'll have people that we see cases every day, or like where there's numerous belt marks and huge bruises all over the child, and it was because they got a poor grade in a or something that's not really a behavior that you can discipline. So in that setting, I don't think I would call it corporal discipline. It was just some lashing out by an adult, an angry adult.
It's not the don't cross the street, and I want you to remember that, so I'm going to swat you on the bottom so you never
Precisely.
forget.
It's not really discipline if you really tease it out, and it's not very effective. So I think that the community discussing this is a good idea. Like the community standard should be, you know, we don't really think this is working, and there's good data showing it doesn't work. Those children are more aggressive. Those children are more likely to get in trouble. And there are other methods that are much more effective in changing behavior.
And that's where education and awareness comes in, you know.
And if we make them if we make our children priority, if we realize that they are our most precious commodity, and they basically just need three things. They need acceptance, which is forgiveness. They need attention, which is time. And they need affection, which is love. And I believe that those three things can cure any misbehavior or problems that they have. If we understand that kids are given to us for us to treat them as jewels, to help prepare them for the future. Again, if we go back to changing our mindset and committing ourselves to what I call change, children having a need to grow every day. So if I'm disciplining a child, I'm facilitating a process for them to grow. If I'm abusing them, I'm almost eliminating the opportunity for them to grow. So I think our greater appreciation for children, whether they come to us willingly or by default, because we know a lot of children are born by default, it was not planned. But once we have them, we have to understand that they are our future. And we also have to understand that they actually love those parents. And a lot of times the perpetrator that's abusing them has a sickness that the child just can't even comprehend.
I think it's more of breaking the cycle.
So we have to help.
Breaking the cycle of the family. I don't want to use the word tradition, but it's a cycle that they've learned
custom
through the years, and it goes from one generation to the next. And about with this generation, we're going to break the cycle of discipline. We do it this way. Let's find a different way. Let's use reinforcement.
And I hate to cut you off, but that is where we need to stop. We are going to break that cycle. The community is going to come together to change the way we treat our children, and we will be able to stomp out abuse in our community. As we've seen, the prevention of child abuse and neglect is everyone's responsibility. We can change this dynamic. If you need help finding the right kind of support, if you're a parent who needs that, call 211. In an emergency, if your child is hurt, call 911. And remember that if you suspect the child is being abused or neglected, the law requires you to report it by calling the number on your screen, 1-800-96-ABUSE. I want to thank Dr. Rosalind Osgood, Dr. John Wright, Neva Rainford-Smith, Ashaki Hayes-Morris, and Lauren Book for their insights and expertise. I have been your host, Cindy Ehrenberg-Seltzer, President and CEO of the Children's Services Council of Broward County, where our mission is to empower Broward's children to become responsible, productive adults, capable of realizing their full potential, their hopes, and their dreams. For copies of this program or any other episode of Future First, please call the Children's Services Council at 954-377-1000 or visit www.cscbroward.org. Like us on Facebook, and remember to join us next time on Future First, Focus on Broward's Children.